Do you know how much my shoes cost, this evil woman?
How dare you! You ruined my shoes! I'm sorry, ma'am.
Hey, they're my job!
Before the mop. The dew had not yet lifted from the lawns of the Onuma compound on Banana Island when Mama Addis chose her clothes for the day. She did not reach for the lace her son Ifeanyi had brought from Italy. She did not reach for the ivory beads her grandchildren had given her last Christmas. From the bottom of a small metal trunk she had carried with her since Enugu, a trunk older than her son, older than her husband's funeral, she pulled out a faded wrapper, a plain blouse, a black headscarf, and a pair of rubber slippers worn smooth at the heels. Her steward, Sunday, watched her dress with worried eyes. "Madam," he said at last, "you are going to the office like this?" "Sunday," she said, tying the scarf with the precision of a woman who had once tied it every morning for 60 years, "Go and tell the driver to bring out the small Honda. Not the Range Rover. The small one with the dent by the side mirror." "Madam." "And tell my son Ifeanyi nothing." He nodded slowly and left. Mama Addis sat at her mirror and studied her face. 72 years lived between ABA and Anambra and now Lagos. She had buried a husband. She had raised a son who, against every prediction of every uncle in the village, had built a holding company that owned banks and shipping lines and a refinery rising in Lekki. She had stood at his side when he opened the first branch of Onuma Holdings on Odeola Odiku Street, and she had told him then, in the quiet of the new boardroom that still smelled of paint, the only thing she had ever asked of him, that the man he became when he had everything must be the man he had truly been when he had nothing. And that he must be careful, very careful, about who he raised to sit beside him. He had remembered. And last week, when the board had begun whispering about who would replace Mr. Bassi as Chief Operating Officer, Ifeanyi had come to her, as he came to her about all important things, and asked, "Mama, how do I know?" She had not answered him then. She was answering him now. The driver brought the small Honda around. Mama Addis took her bag, a market bag, the kind that holds yam and onions, and stepped into the morning. The cleaner's bucket. Igbo proverb. Oni ji oni enoni, ji onwiya. He who holds another down on the ground holds himself down also. The lobby of Onuma Towers on Odeola Odiku Street was a cathedral of glass and granite. At 7:15 in the morning, the air conditioning had not yet warmed enough to lose its bite, and the first wave of staff was beginning to arrive in dark suits and pencil skirts. The security men at the door wore navy uniforms and white gloves. The receptionist behind the curved desk wore a small headset and a smaller smile. None of them looked twice at the elderly woman in the faded wrapper who entered behind a delivery boy and was waved through with a tired glance. Mama Addis walked past the reception desk as though she had walked past it 1,000 times. In the side corridor she found what she was looking for, a janitor's closet, half open, smelling of bleach and floor polish. She slipped inside, took down a blue plastic bucket and a string mop from the wall, and emerged into the lobby again with the steady, unhurried bearing of a woman who belonged exactly where she was. She moved to the area near the elevators. She lowered the bucket. She began to mop. The marble floor was already clean. That was not the point. The point was to be seen. Or rather, to be unseen, which, when one has built an empire by watching men carefully, is its own kind of seeing. Within 20 minutes she had her first lesson. A young woman from the IT department, dressed in a soft pink blouse, walked past, glanced at her, and said, "Good morning, Ma," with the gentle reflex of a girl raised by a grandmother. Mama nodded. The girl walked on. Two men from the legal floor passed, deep in conversation about a tribunal hearing scheduled at the Federal High Court. They did not see her at all. That was not a sin, Mama thought, returning her mop to the bucket. Men in a hurry are men in a hurry. Then came a man with a thin mustache and a hard tie who stopped, looked at the wet patch she had just mopped, made a small, irritated noise, and stepped widely around it without a word. He did not greet her. He did not curse her. He simply behaved as though the floor cleaned itself and she were the floor's own shadow. She watched him go and made a small note of his face. The elevator chimed. The doors opened. And out stepped Mrs. Judith Adikana. Mama Addis had heard the name many times. Judith was the director of operations, a woman in her early 40s whose ascent through Onima Holdings had been swift and noisy. She wore a cream skirt suit, a MS scarf knotted at her throat, and red-soled shoes that clicked against the marble with a sound like a metronome. Behind her trailed a younger woman, her assistant, Funmi, carrying 2 phones and a leather folder. Judith did not look down. Judith never looked down. She was, even now, looking at the screen of her phone with an expression of half-amused irritation, the way one looks at a slow-witted relative. Mama Addis, mopping near the elevator bank, stepped slightly back as Judith approached. The wet floor lay between them like a small lake. Judith did not notice the wet floor. She walked through it. Her left red-soled shoe came down at the edge of the wet patch and slid the smallest distance, not enough to make her fall, not enough even to break her stride, but enough to send a fine spray of soapy water across the inside of her ankle and the toe of her right shoe. Time, in the lobby, paused. Judith stopped walking. She looked down at her shoes. She looked at the bucket. She looked at the old woman holding the mop. And she said, very quietly, in a voice that carried because everything Judith said carried, "Did you just splash water on me?" The slap heard in marble. Yoruba proverb. Eki aifa ibinujibi enyan loju, ibinuki aisin enyan de a. Do not slap a fellow being in anger, for anger never walks one home. Oh, my pikin, sorry oh, Mama Addis said, dropping into the soft pidgin of a market woman. She bent to pick up the mop she had not actually dropped, lowering her body slightly in the old gesture of deference. The floor be wet. I asked you a question. Judith's voice had climbed half an octave. Did you splash water on me? The lobby had gone quiet now. 2 security men by the door were looking. The receptionist's small smile had vanished. Funmi, the assistant, was frozen behind her boss with the 2 phones held against her chest like prayer books. Madam, sorry. The floor. Do you know what these shoes cost? Judith said. She lifted one foot a small distance from the ground, as though her shoe were a wounded animal she was presenting for inspection. Do you know what this scarf cost? Do you have any idea, you? Her hand made a small circling gesture at Mama Addis, at her wrapper, at her bucket, at all of her. Any idea what one strand of this scarf cost? Madam, please. Don't please me. Look at me when I am talking to you. Look up. You can't even look up. Mama Addis raised her eyes. She had buried a husband at this woman's age. She had carried Gary in a basin on her head across the road from Ogbit Market in Enugu to feed 3 children when her own husband was a junior clerk at the post office and there was no money for the lorry. She had looked at many things in 72 years. She looked at Judith now with the gentle, slightly clouded gaze of an old woman accustomed to being slightly invisible. She let her lower lip tremble, just a little. Useless, Judith said. Completely useless. Who hired you? Who is your supervisor? Get him down here now. Phone me. Call Mr. Bassi. No, don't call Mr. Bassi, call the head of facilities. Tell him I want this woman off the premises before lunch. Yes ma, Funmi whispered. And then, because anger that begins as a fire must be fed, or it shames the one who lit it, Judith took a single step forward and slapped Mama Addis across the face. It was not a hard slap. Judith was not a strong woman in that way. But it was open, and it was on the cheek, and it was witnessed by every person in that lobby, by the security men, by the receptionist, by Funmi, by the delivery boy still loitering by the door, by the young IT girl in the pink blouse who had paused on the staircase and now stood with her hand against her own mouth. Mama Addis did not flinch. Her head moved a small distance to the side and came back. She lowered her eyes. A line of moisture, very thin, gathered at the corner of one eye. Whether it was pain or laughter she did not say. "Now mop it up properly," Judith said. "And next time you see me coming, you move." She turned. Her heels resumed their metronome rhythm. Fun me followed. The elevator doors closed on them, and the lobby exhaled. For a long moment no one moved. Then the IT girl in the pink blouse came down the rest of the stairs, knelt by the bucket, and said, "Mama, are you alright?" "Sorry, Ma. Sorry." Mama Addis allowed the girl to touch her wrist. "I dey fine, my daughter." The girl looked at her face, at the pink mark blooming on her cheek, and her eyes filled. "What is your name, Ma?" "Addis," said Mama Addis. It was, after all, her real name. "My name is Kayamika," said the girl. "Akora at noon." Igbo proverb. Aka nri ku aka ep aku aka nri. The right hand washes the left, and the left hand washes the right. Kayamika would not let her mop alone after that. She found a second mop in the closet, over the soft, embarrassed protest of the facilities supervisor who had finally been located, and walked the floor beside Mama Addis for the next half hour, ignoring her own desk and the spreadsheet blinking on her monitor. She wore her good blouse and her good shoes, and she did not seem to care that the hem of her trousers grew dark with mop water. "Your blouse, my daughter," Mama murmured. "My blouse can wash, Mama. Your face cannot wash anyhow." When the lobby was dry, Kayamika guided her to a small bench in the rear courtyard where the smokers and the prayer warriors and the women with new babies retreated for their breaks. She brought a small fan she had carried down from her desk. At noon, she unwrapped a small parcel of akara and a flask of pap and laid it on the bench between them. "My mother fries this every morning," she said, embarrassed. "She is in ABA. She still sends me money sometimes, Mama, can you imagine? I tell her, Mommy, I am the one working now. She say, you are still my pikin." "She raised a good child," Mama said. Kayamika smiled and looked away. "I have been here 2 years. I am in the accounts department. They keep saying I will be promoted, but," she gave a small, philosophical shrug, "the people who get promoted are the people who," she did not finish. She bit into an akara. "The people who? The people who know how to be noticed. By the right people. In the right way. And you do not know? I am learning." She did not say it bitterly. She said it as a woman says a thing she has decided to accept for the time being, while she works on becoming something else. While they ate, Mama Addis watched the courtyard. A young man in a security uniform helped an old gateman carry a kettle of hot water without being asked. A driver shared his orange with a girl from the canteen. A senior manager, Mama recognized the mustache and the hair tie from the morning, sat at a far table and snapped his fingers at a waiter who, when he finally came, was giving an order without a please. Mama Addis made another small note of his face. "What is the name of that one?" she asked, very softly. "Oga Emeka," Kayamika said. "Procurement. He is alright. He doesn't say good morning, but he doesn't shout at people. When the bell rang to call the staff back, Kayamika gathered her cloth and her flask. "Mama, please don't go yet. I will tell facilities you are still here. Rest a small. The floor can wait." "My daughter," said Mama Addis, "do you have a phone number?" The girl wrote it on a corner torn from her notebook, in the careful round hand of a girl whose handwriting had once won a prize in primary school in ABA. Mama folded it twice and placed it inside her wrapper, against her hip, where she kept the things that mattered. The boardroom. Yoruba proverb. Eni to P ida rini, owo rikeoti to oro. He who calls his fellow being poor has not yet truly touched wealth. The board meeting was scheduled for 3 o'clock. Mr. Bassi, the outgoing chief operating officer, opened it with his usual remarks about quarterly performance and a polite cough at the figures from the Port Harcourt branch. Around the long mahogany table sat the directors of the 8 divisions of Onyema Holdings. Judith Adikanal sat in her usual seat to the left of the empty chair at the head, with a fresh pair of shoes. Her assistant had been sent to her house in Lekki to fetch them, and a Hermes scarf knotted around the small bruise on her own pride. At 3:10, Chief Ifani Onyema entered. He was a tall man in his late 40s, dark-suited, with his mother's mouth and his late father's eyes. He sat at the head of the table, but he did not begin. Before we proceed, he said, I would like to introduce, or perhaps reintroduce, a member of this board who has not attended a sitting in some years. Many of you have heard her name. Few of you have met her. He raised one hand toward the side door. It opened. A small old woman entered. She wore a faded wrapper, a plain blouse, and a black headscarf. Her slippers were rubber. In her hand she carried a market bag. Mr. Bassi rose. 2 other directors rose more slowly. Judith Adikanal did not rise. She blinked. She blinked again. Her hand, which had been resting on her water glass, moved very slowly down to her lap, as though it had decided to hide there. My mother, said Chief Onyema, Dame Adis Onyema, founding board member of this company. She has been visiting our offices today, in her own way. She would like to share a few observations. He stood, and gave her his chair. Mama Adis did not sit at the head. She sat in the chair beside it, where she had always sat. She placed her market bag on the floor. She folded her hands. Good afternoon, my children, she said. The room said good afternoon in a voice that had forgotten itself. I came today to look. Not to be looked at. My son is choosing his next chief operating officer. I told him long ago that the man, or the woman, who sits in that chair must be a person who treats the small as they treat the large. Because money is a wind, my children. It blows. And the one who, when no one was watching, was kind to a cleaner, that one would be kind to a partner, kind to a shareholder, kind to a stranger walking into our doors. And the one who was cruel to a cleaner, she did not look at Judith. She did not need to. That one would be cruel in every chair we ever give them. Silence in that room is a thing that cannot easily be described. Even the air conditioning seemed to lower its voice. This morning, Mama continued, I was greeted by a young woman in IT in a pink blouse. I was helped, after a small matter, by a junior accountant from accounts named Kayamika Is. A security officer named Ifani, write this down, named Musa, helped an old gateman carry a kettle of hot water. A driver shared his orange with a canteen girl. These are small things. They are not small things. She paused. She lifted her water glass with a hand that did not tremble. I was also slapped, my children. In our own lobby. By one of you. No one spoke. Judith's eyes had gone glass. I do not want her punished today, Mama said. I want her to sit with herself. My son will decide what to do with her position. But I will say this to you all, today she struck an old woman she believed had no power. That is who she is when she believes no one is watching. Remember that, all of you, when you next walk past a cleaner, or past anyone whose name you have not bothered to learn. She picked up her market bag. She rose. Carry on with your meeting. She left through the side door. Reckoning without thunder. Igbo proverb. Aichi onimatia enyuweko ojieri. What a person plants in this world is what they will surely harvest. Chief Onyema did not fire Judith Adikanal that afternoon. He did not fire her that week. His mother, when he came to her that night still trembling with a son's slow rage, said only one thing, Ifani. Do not give her the gift of a dramatic ending. Let her undo herself. And so, slowly, that is what happened. On Monday, Judith Adikana was informed that the Director of Operations role would, by board decision, be split into two, a Director of Internal Operations, and a Director of External Liaison. She would retain External Liaison. Her direct reports would be reduced from 46 to 4. Her office, on the floor below the executive suite, would be moved to a smaller office on the 9th floor. She accepted these changes with a tight smile and the same MS scarf. She told the women in her prayer group at the Anglican Cathedral on Marina that she had been reorganized for strategic reasons, and the women, who knew the way Lagos talks, nodded and said of course, dear, and did not invite her to the next ladies' luncheon. But the work of external liaison required, more than anything, the cultivation of warmth. It required walking into rooms full of partners and clients and making them feel welcome. It required remembering the names of receptionists at the firms one visited. It required, when one's car door was opened by a driver one had never met, saying thank you. Judith Adikana did not know how to do these things. She had never learned. And in the small daily failures of a person who has not learned to be small, her authority drained out of her like water from a cracked clay pot. A client from Port Harcourt requested in writing that she not be sent to his office again. A senior partner at a Lagos law firm took her aside, gently, and asked whether she was alright these days. Her assistant Fanmi requested a transfer. Within 4 months, Judith Adikana resigned, citing family reasons, and her family, when she went home to them, did not know exactly what she meant either. Her husband turned, who had laughed too easily at her stories about useless people over the dinner table for 15 years of marriage, found that the stories were no longer funny when his wife was the one being laughed at in the WhatsApp groups of Victoria Island. He moved his evening drinks to a different club on Akin Adesola Street, and he stopped telling his colleagues exactly where his wife worked. She found a position at a smaller firm in Ikoyi. The smaller firm, hearing how she had left Onima Holdings, did not give her the title she had hoped for. She wears the Hermes scarf still. The Odiola Odiku Elevator Bank she has not entered again. She has not become poor. Karma in this world rarely strips a person bare. It only takes the loudest part of them and turns it down, year by year, until the woman she was, the woman who slapped a stranger because her shoes were wet, has nowhere left to be loud. The quiet promotion. Yoruba proverb. Omotubari erari enai mosai enbigo. The one who humbles herself is the one who will be lifted up. 2 weeks after the board meeting, Kameka is received an email she did not understand at first. It came from the office of the chairman. It informed her that she had been selected for the inaugural Addis Onima mentorship program, a 1-year placement that would rotate her through accounts, operations, and strategy, with a stipend that doubled her current salary and a tuition allowance for the part-time MBA at Lagos Business School that she had been quietly saving for since she joined the company. She read the email 3 times. She walked to the bathroom on the 7th floor and read it again on her phone. Then she walked back to her desk and called her mother in ABA. Mommy. Mommy, I think God has remembered me. My pikin, said her mother, God never forgot you. Wetin happen? Kayamaka could not explain. She did not yet know about Mama Addis. She knew only that something she had been hoping for in the dark had been answered in the light. The interview, when she went to it the following week on the executive floor, was conducted by Chief Onima himself and a small, plainly dressed old woman whom he introduced simply as Mama. The old woman asked her 3 questions. The first was about her work. The second was about her mother in ABA. The third was, do you remember a cleaner in the lobby some weeks ago? Kayameka's hand went, without her telling it to her own cheek, as though she could still feel the pink mark she had once seen blooming on someone else's. I remember her, Ma. What was her name? Mama Addis, Ma. The old woman smiled, very slightly. Chief Onyema looked down at his notes, and his shoulders moved, just once, in the way a man's shoulders move when he is holding something back. "You have the position, my daughter," said Mama Addis. The lagoon like a quiet promise. 8 months later, the lobby of Onyema Towers on Odeola Odiku Street was the same cathedral of glass and granite. The security men still wore navy uniforms. The receptionist still wore her small headset and her small smile. The marble was still mopped every morning by a woman in a blue uniform, whose name, if you bothered to ask her, was Mrs. Grace Okoro, and whose husband was a welder in Ajigona, and whose younger son had just begun JSS1 at a federal government college in Enugu. Mrs. Grace Okoro received a Christmas hamper from Kameka East that year. She also received one from a man in a security uniform named Musa, and from an IT girl in a pink blouse whose name no one quite caught the first time. She did not receive one from Oga Emeka of Procurement, who had been quietly transferred to a smaller branch in Abeokuta after a separate matter involving a vendor in Ibadan. In a small flat on the mainland side of Lekki Phase 1, Mrs. Judith Adikana, formerly of Onyema Holdings, sat at her dining table one evening and untied her Hermes scarf. She folded it carefully. She placed it in a drawer. She did not know yet that she would never wear it to an office again. She thought, sometimes, of the slap. When she thought of it, she told herself it had been a misunderstanding. She told herself the old woman had been rude. She told herself many things. In Banana Island, in a quiet sitting room that smelled of lemongrass tea and old books, Mama Addis sat in her favorite chair and read the report her son had brought her, quarterly numbers, 3 new appointments, and a small note at the bottom that said, in his careful blue ink, "Mama, Kameka has completed her first rotation. Operations have requested to keep her permanently." Mama Addis set the report down. She lifted her tea. She looked out of the window at the lagoon. "My son," she said to no one in particular, "the man you become when you have everything is the man you truly were when you had nothing." She sipped her tea. The lagoon shone like a quiet promise.